that. And so if I am so focused on staying on the line, I can't fulfill my assignment. But my God is big enough to handle my fault, my strokes, grubs, my mess ups, because he's already prepared for what I might do. He knows what I'm going to do before I do it, and he already made preparation for me before I get there. What follows darkness is light. That darkness is the indicator that light is getting ready to shine. So there it is in Genesis. When darkness was upon the face of the deep, then God in the spirit form moved upon the face of the waters. And then God said, let there be. Because darkness precedes the light. Are you understanding what I'm saying? But he needs the darkness there so that God can move upon the face of the deep, so that the shift can take place. Listen, look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor that shift take place in the darkness. Oh, y'all didn't hear what I just said. Everybody's not going to see the shift that's happening. They see the chaos, but they don't see the shift. They see all the craziness going on in your life, but they don't understand that underneath the darkness, God is moving in secret. He's moving in quiet. He's moving in hidden places. He's moving in the cracks and the corners and the crevices. He's moving in places that you cannot see. And when the light comes, they're going to see a new order. Afraid to dream, afraid to imagine. But I'm here to tell you that you are an infinite, limitless, boundless being. Are you willing to do what is necessary to have what you desire?
Thank you for joining us. Please take a moment and like the Facebook page. Subscribe to the YouTube page and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when we go live. If you are finding value in these enrichment sessions, please consider supporting this page financially. Your donations allow us to continue to provide spiritual enlightenment, self-exploration, and kingdom knowledge. Also, consider becoming a partner because partnerships have this privilege. As a partner, you'll be able to attend our annual Partners Only Summer Summit, join us for our 6 a.m. virtual daily guided meditation sessions, weekly advanced empowerment sessions, regular prophetic insights and instructions, 30% discount on all Emerge books and merchandise, and a custom Emerge t-shirt. You'll also gain full access to the private Emerge Movement community page as well as group chats. Once again, thank you for watching.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Emerge Empowerment Session. I'm your host, Isaac J. Miles, and I am ecstatic that you have chosen to join me this morning for this very powerful, impactful, and important empowerment session that we will have today. Now, normally we focus our attention on giving you spiritual insights and equipping you with spiritual principles, practices, and patterns that will help you and guide you along your path towards spiritual wholeness. Today, not so much, even though there is spiritual significance to this conversation. Some of you may view it as more secular and civil than spiritual. But because we understand that the secular and the civil have a direct effect on the spiritual, and the spiritual is often what causes the reflection of itself to be seen in the secular and the civil, then we want to take some time and to really hone in on some things that are, something that is preparing to take place in the secular and civil community within the United States that has a global impact. It's not that the United States is the center of the world, it is not, but it is one of the most powerful nations on the planet. And so therefore, what affects this nation has a global effect as well. Not only that, we're not speaking just about the broad global significance of what's on the horizon, but we're going to try and hone in on the specific individual effect that is at stake for each and every one of us as citizens of this country and as part of the global community. This won't be a lot of hooping and hollering and yelling or screaming, but it will be packed filled with information. We're going to spend this session talking about Project 2025 in plain English. Plain, easy to understand, practical English, and try and break down what this agenda is all about. Because whether you want to believe it or not, this will affect every single one of us, no matter where you're from, what your social economic status is, or what your particular religious ideology is. It does not matter whether you are religious, agnostic, or atheist. It doesn't matter whether you are Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Indian. It does not matter whether you are first generation American or you are descendants of those who migrated here, or more importantly, if you are descendants of those who were brought here and enslaved in this country. This concerns you. Even if you are one of those people who are skeptical and hold certain craven ideas about the government, and how it operates in this United States, this imperfect government, imperfect union that we are intrinsically a part of, it will directly affect you. And please, please, I want you to set aside the cynicistic idea that the government's going to do whatever it wants to do anyway. I really don't have any say so. I really don't have any power. And besides, it really doesn't apply to me. None of that is true. This is a problem and a situation, a potential circumstance that will affect every living person in this country, particularly, and the global community collectively. So what is about to take place and what is on the horizon is vital. It's vitally important that we are aware, that we are very, very aware of what's taking place. So I'm going to ask those of you who are on with me right now, there's about 15, 16 of you that are on across all the different platforms here on Facebook. There are 3 different platforms on Facebook that are running this simultaneously. And those of you watching via YouTube Live, I'm going to ask every single one of you to do me a favor and make sure that you begin to tag as many people as you possibly can and encourage and admonish them to come and participate in this conversation. Tag them, share this video right now on your page. Go ahead, do it now. Share it. Hit the share button right there. Those of you watching on Facebook, hit the share button, all of you, and share this on your page so that those who follow your page will be able to tune in and made aware of this conversation. Tag people in the comments, as many people as you can possibly tag, because this is important to everyone. I'm going to speak in very plain, simple, and practical language so that everyone can understand. This is not a political debate. It is not political advocacy. It is just giving you plain, hardcore, backed up facts that cannot be denied. Nothing that I say to you during the course of this conversation is hyperbole. None of it is made up. None of it is conspiracy theory. All of it can be verified by just doing a simple Google search yourself, going to the project's own webpage and reading this 900-page document for yourself. Now, I'm not going to read the entire 900-page document, so don't get scared. But I am going to give you a comprehensive summary of what this project involves and how it affects you directly. So you won't hear a whole lot of mentions about the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, about Jesus, or the anointing, the power, the Spirit of God, and all of that involved in this particular conversation. But all of what we discuss is of spiritual as well as physical, emotional, mental, and financial significance to your life. Please, whatever you do, don't tune out. This is vitally important. And and I'm going to say this that may already sound controversial in a little bit, might put you off a little bit. But if your leader, pastor, bishop, apostle, prophet, teacher, evangelist, mentor, guru, minister, rabbi, priest is not talking about this, then they are doing you a disservice. They are doing you a huge disservice. These institutions have to be more than just a feel-good party and gathering for the believers and the initiated to come and dance and shout and holler and forget all about their troubles. They have to be places where we inform people and empower them with knowledge that they can then use to begin to create, cultivate, and curate the abundant life for themselves. So if you are a pastor or leader or of any type, this is a topic that you should be screaming from the rooftop and should be mentioning in every sermon, soliloquy, or speech that you give from now until November. This is something that we should be talking about. This is way more important than any reality show or any of the latest movies or television programs that are coming on. This isn't a topic that affects every single human being of every age, every ethnicity, every race, every religion, every creed, every ideology. It includes all of us. So please, again, I'm asking you, tag as many people in the comments as you possibly can. Please don't, just sit there and hear me say that and do nothing. Get in the comments and start tagging all your friends, families, and everyone on your friends list or your timeline. Please share this broadcast on your page and do it right now. I'm going to pause and give you about another 15 to 20 seconds to do that because it doesn't take long. I've got a lot of information to give you, and we're going to try and squeeze it all in to this one session. Again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Feel free to ask questions in the comments section or to provide your own commentary and your thoughts. Nothing is off limits. You can put it in the comments, and I will keep my eye on the comments as they come up and try and address any of them. Okay? So let's begin. Project 2025 in plain English. So I want to begin by first defining and then discussing a term that you may or may not be familiar with. The term is authoritarianism. Authoritarianism. Okay? Authoritarian regimes generally abolish and restrict civil liberties. They concentrate political power and impede or weaken free elections that allow for alternations of power. An authoritarian state might normally contain some democratic institutions, such as political parties and legislatures and elections, which are managed, though, in such a way as to entrench authoritarian rule by using certain tools like gerrymandering and restrictions of social services that include things like Medicare, Medicaid, or education. Authoritarianism's opposition to liberal democracy which is the Bipartisan Freedom House, one of the oldest institutions defending global democracy, defines as, here's what they define liberal democracy as. When we talk about liberal democracy, we are not talking about, one of the two parties. We're talking about democracy as a whole. Here is how it is defined. Liberal democracy is defined as encompassing much more than elections and majority rule. Liberal democracies are typified by governance based on the consent of the governed. Governance based on the consent of the governed, that the government reflects the will of the people. It's also typified by accountability of all institutions and adherence to the rule of law and respect for human rights. They have an independent courts, they have independent press, and a liberal democracy has a thriving civil society. Liberal democracies are open to change in power, with rival candidates or parties competing fairly for the governed, for the good of the public, and for all of humanity as a whole, not just for themselves or for those who voted for them. Let me repeat that last part. Liberal democracies are open to changes in power, with rival candidates or parties competing fairly to govern for the good of the public as a whole, not just for themselves or for the people that voted for them. A true liberal democracy and leader of a liberal democracy understands that while they may have had to compete for the positions of leadership, they are responsible for leading in a way that benefits everybody and not just the people that voted for them, and especially not just for themselves. That is a real definition of a liberal democracy. Do you understand what I just said? The path that we are on is a path toward authoritarianism. The path to authoritarianism usually first involves some democratic backsliding. And again, I'm not talking about the Democrat Party. Democracy or democratic backsliding is saying that we are moving away from liberal democratic ideals. And in order for us to slide into authoritarianism, it has to be preceded by some democratic backsliding, propelled by political figures and parties with authoritarian instincts who employ certain authoritarian tactics. These factors are extremely prevalent in Project 2025, which explicitly advocates for politicizing independent institutions. I want you to hear what I just said. Project 2025 explicitly advocates for politicizing what has always been independent institutions by replacing the federal bureaucracy with conservative activists and removing the independence from every agency. It advocates for gutting what is called, or what they call, the deep state. Now, the deep state is a conspiracy theory shared by the Project 2025 authors that blames civil servants for a coordinated effort to undermine a conservative agenda. They have a victim consciousness that says everybody's out to get them or get those who classify themselves as conservative. Project 2025 claims to have already been recruiting and training those who will replace these career civil servants with the project's director, Paul Dans, that's his last name, Paul Dans, saying, "We are looking for conservative warriors, those who will pledge their fealty to conservative values." We all know that buzzword conservative usually means white Christian nationalist ideology. Okay? It's just a different terminology trying to mask their true intent. Perhaps the most ominous, Project 2025 targets the Department of Justice. That oversees the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, so on and so forth, the Attorney General. It targets the Department of Justice and the FBI. The project states about the next president, quote, that he will need to decide expeditiously how to handle any major ongoing litigation or other pending legal matters that might present a challenge to this agenda. That's a direct quote from the Project 2025 agenda. Let me repeat what it says. That the president, he will need to decide expeditiously how to handle any major ongoing litigation or other pending legal matters that might present a challenge to his own agenda. In other words, that he should have the liberty and freedom to not only challenge but destroy any litigation that could hinder him from imposing his will, him or her. In other words, that the president should now be morphed into a dictatorship. Now, we all know that the current presidential candidate, Donald Trump, is under investigation, indictment, and facing the indictment for several different crimes. This project advocates that the president should be able to dismiss and destroy and end all investigations into anything that he has done or will do. And if you've been paying attention to what's happening in the country and watched on the news, you know that the Supreme Court has already ruled that the president has all but absolute immunity from prosecution for anything that he or she does while in office that is deemed a part of their primary responsibility. This basically says that a person who occupies the office of president has the freedom to commit crime if they believe that it is in the interests of national security. There is no check or balance. There is no prerequisite or an opening for an investigation by any other agency or any other part of the government. It is solely at the discretion of the president to act in what they believe is in the national interest, and they cannot be prosecuted no matter what that action is. So when Donald Trump initially said back in 2016 he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, kill them, and he would still not lose a single vote, and that he could be justified in his action, the Supreme Court says that if he, as the President of the United States, considers a person, place, or thing a national security risk, he is well within his rights to have them assassinated and cannot be prosecuted for it. That is a power that should not be given to any person, but especially not someone who is as psychopathic as Donald Trump. Let's continue. So rather than allowing the Department of Justice and the FBI to act independently to ensure the rule of law, a very real fear with the Project 2025's recommendation for the president to take control of investigations and prosecutions is that a president will abuse that power to target political rivals and those who disagree with their policies. Since Watergate, presidents of both parties have worked to ensure the independence of prosecutions from political influence. But the project would politicize key institutions such as the Department of Justice and strip the civil rights protections from multiple communities, but particularly the African American community and the LGBTQ plus community. Those are the two most targeted communities by this project. You need to hear what I just said. The two most targeted communities by this project are the African American community and the LGBTQ plus community, with the Hispanic community running a very close third. I'm going to show you why. Just stay with me. The project especially demonizes the transgender community, equating transgenderism and transgender ideology with pornography. Immigrants are demonized with false claims of inherent criminality, turning them into a national security threat that must be dealt with harshly. And the anti-Black racism is so evident in the project's sweeping denunciation of what they call noxious noxious tenants. And when they say noxious tenants, they mean things like critical race theory, which is something that's been blown out of proportion because that's really just a college level course that's only taught at the college level and beyond, graduate level. It's never been in any public schools, never been in any K through 12 curriculum, but they have convinced an entire pocket of society that it is so, and it's a threat to humanity and a threat to America. A lot of nonsense. Okay? Which falsely claim that it is advocating for more racial discrimination rather than just acknowledging the true American history of racism. And they have always had advocates for this, and unfortunately, some self-hating, straw boss desiring Black people who so crave to be white adjacent and accepted and validated by white Christian society, they will stand in front of audiences like that lunatic Tim Scott and declare America is not a racist country, when it is an absolute historical and empirical fact that America has always been a racist country. It was founded on racism. It has been built by the blood, torture, and on the backs of slaves, of Black people stolen from their homeland, brought to this country, and forced into torturous, heinous slavery, and then afterwards left to remain and be classified as second-class citizens through policies like segregation, Black codes, redlining, and discrimination. That still continue to this day. And don't let people convince you that that's been a long time ago. I'm not that old, and yet I remember segregation, discrimination. Not I read about, I remember it. And any Black person, I was about to say, that grew up in the South of my age and older, but not just the South, in the North as well, anywhere in the United States, have vivid memories of what it's like to experience open, legal discrimination. We all do. So don't let them tell you, oh, that's a long time ago, that's over, that's not who we are. It is exactly who this country is and has always been. It is the character of this country. It is woven into the fabric of this country. It is a part of the foundation and the substratum of the American experience. Now, that may upset some of you, but it is a fact. Okay? As for the FBI, this is the only agency in the entire federal government where Trump's policies and their policy team want to collect racial data. In every other part of the government, Project 2025 and Trump's policy forbids the collection of any race-based data so that they can claim racism doesn't exist. The only place where they will allow race-based data to be collected is with the agency of the FBI. Why is that? The National Crime Victimization Survey is of particular importance. This is what Project 2025 says. Quote, the National Crime Victimization Survey, and if you don't know what that is, I'm going to explain, but you can Google it yourself, is of particular importance. It goes on to say, the demographic information that the crime victim provides enables such reports as race and ethnicity of violent crime offenders and arrestees in 2018, and finds that police are arresting those who, according to victims, actually commit crime. In other words, it's another way of saying that Black people are more prone to criminality than anyone else because of their quote unquote, here it is from the report, animalistic tendencies. I didn't make that up. That's written in the report. Yet somehow, that same report, they also want to prohibit the FBI from engaging in, quote, activities related to combating the spread of so-called misinformation and disinformation, unquote. They will stop the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division from investigating voter suppression and election interference. We want to investigate crimes, but not those crimes that affect us. So all of this stuff about voter suppression and election interference, no, we're not going to investigate that. We want to leave that completely out of the purview of the FBI. Yet, let's keep going. They will stop I said that part already. Parents of children, listen to this. This is written in Project 2025's agenda. Parents of children who commit crimes like mass shootings won't be subject to prosecution. But Trump's Agenda 47, which is just a watered down version of Project 2025, pledges to wipe out gangs and investigate progressive prosecutors, they call them, in Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, and every other city where these quote unquote, their terms, maniacs have taken over. You will find that the new substitution words for the N word are terms like barbarians, maniacs, animals, thugs, gangs. It's just another way that they've come up to classify or point out to Black people and brown people without using the N word. Okay? Meanwhile, Project 2025 wants to use the federal government to, quote, target violent crime and career criminals and use the death penalty as often as possible until Congress legislates otherwise. You heard me right. They want to even impose the death penalty on low-level drug dealers. Did you catch what I just said? They're aiming at your sons, your daughters, who may have sold a dime bag of weed or a gram of cocaine with the death penalty. Not incarceration, the death penalty. And again, I'm not making anything up. All of this is written in black and white in Project 2025. Go and download the 900-page document. It's in PDF form, and you can read it for yourself. The DOJ, it says, will reevaluate whether social media threats and online disinformation and white supremacy should be considered forms of domestic terrorism and would impose the death penalty upon low-level drug dealers. Quote, unquote, Project 2025. Now, I want to break down a few more Yes, that's very true. I was just reading the comments over here. Don says, Driscoll, they renamed Project 2025 when it started to get exposed. Don't remember the new name. It's a 900-page document. You're absolutely right. But it is also, the watered down version of it is what the Trump administration or potential administration has labeled Agenda 47, which is just Project 2025 Light. That's all it is, okay? But all of this is online. You can read it for yourself. But I've got more because there's a lot more to it. And so I want to give you some visuals so that we can click through it together. Stay with me. This is important. Project 2025, I labeled Make America White Again. And this is not anything against white people, but the goal of the far extreme white evangelical right is to take America back to a time where it was ruled primarily by old white Christian men. When women had no rights, Black people had no rights, and the only ones who made decisions and controlled power in this country were old white Christian men. Let's click through some of the project's ideology. Here are some of the policies. Oh, I see now that I'm going to cover some of the words. So I'm going to take myself out of the picture and I'm going to remove the emerge insignia so that you'll be able to see clearly. Okay. Here are some of the policies called for in the first 180 days of a Trump presidency. And you need to know that this project has been put together with Trump in mind, as much as he is trying to distance himself from it and focus your attention to Agenda 47. But Agenda 47 is Project 2025 in summary. And Project 2025 was composed and written by most of the Trump administration from his last administration, who are people that are involved in his present campaign, and he is closely affiliated with. Some of them he's even issued pardons to previously. So for him to try and say that he has no ties with it, don't know anything about it, I don't know who this person is, like he doesn't know who E. Jean Carroll is. I never met her. I don't know her. That's nonsense, okay? Here are the policies that they called to enact in the first 180 days of a Trump presidency. Number one, eliminating LGBTQ plus transgender rights, to just wipe out civil rights for any person that is a part of the LGBTQI plus community. To eradicate federal funding for DEI programs, and don't let them fool you. Just like critical race theory, they have tried to make DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, seem like a bad word or like a terrible thing. They want to eradicate federal funding for DEI programs because they don't believe there's a problem with race in this country. And so there shouldn't be any programs that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Participation in any critical race theory or DEI initiative will be grounds for termination of any government employee. If you participate in or voice support for critical race theory or for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, that is grounds for termination if you're a government employee. They want to end reproductive freedom and replace the Department of Health and Human Services with what they call the Department of Life. It's their way of saying they want to do away with a woman's right to choose. They want to do away with abortion. Now, to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, I am not an advocate for abortion, but I am an advocate for women's rights to decide whether they want to have an abortion or not. Just because I personally and others may not agree with the act of abortion does not mean that we get to outlaw and take away the choice of other people who happen to believe differently and impose our own ideology upon them. This is the same principle and practice that was in place prior to Loving versus the United States, where white people in America, Christians, believed that it was against the will of God for races to mix, and so they opposed marriage between Black people and white people. Now, that's perfectly fine for your own personal belief, but you cannot impose it as a law and make it illegal for people who love each other to get married simply because they are of a different race. That's what that particular law did. This is what abortion laws do. Or rather, not abortion law, but the removal of Roe versus Wade did. It took away that right and freedom that allows a person, specifically women, to choose what to do with their own body. Let's keep going. They also are calling for, in the first 180 days of a Trump presidency, ending climate change and environmental policies by shutting down the Office of Domestic Climate Policy, the Department of Energy's Office of Clean Energy and Demonstrations, the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, just to name a few. That's OSHA, if you're not familiar. That's just to name a few. Climate science will no longer be used in national security. Now, it is absolutely, deliberately idiotic and stupid to deny that climate change is a real thing. Every one of us who lives here can attest to the fact that we are experiencing extreme climate changes in our weather. We're having one of the hottest summers on record already. Just look at what's been happening in the West, on the West Coast and in the Midwest, with temperatures in triple digits in places that normally would have never seen that kind of weather. And in places where that was common, these triple digits are the extreme. Texas at one point experienced heat up to 119 degrees. They further want to slash the Department of Justice and dismantle the FBI by replacing their traditional independence from political pressure with fealty to the administration, that is, to the president. In other words, whereas now the president and the Department of Justice and FBI operate separately as entities, now the Department of Justice and the FBI would be responsible and responsive to whatever the president's whims or desires are, and would have to pledge fealty and loyalty to the president and not to the Constitution or the rules of law, not to the rule of law or enforcing those, but to simply do whatever the president decides it wants done. It calls for purging the government of apolitical servants by firing as many as 100,000 civil servants and hiring replacements from a database of personally vetted conservative values and loyalty, what they call a conservative LinkedIn. Successful candidates that they would replace these civil servants with will undergo training at a quote unquote presidential training academy and be furnished with the insight, background knowledge, and expertise in governance to immediately begin rolling back destructive policies and advancing conservative ideals in the federal government, unquote. So they want to take 100,000 civil servants who are apolitical. It means that they have served in both
Republican and Democrat administrations, that they are not partisans. They want to eradicate them, fire them, and replace them with clear partisans who are trained to employ and enforce what they call conservative values and ideals. That includes everyone from people who work with the IRS, people who work with Social Security, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, all of these things, and put them in the hands of conservative idealists who pledge their loyalty and fealty to the president. Let's keep going. They are also calling for the eliminating the checks and balances that are built into the three branches of government in favor of expanding control by the executive branch, the president, effectively creating a dictatorship. That Congress, that is the House and the Senate, and every federal department would operate according to the whims and the desires of the president. So there would really almost be no need for a Congress, because they would become a rubber stamp for whatever the president decides it wants to do. They also are calling for the replacing the Department of Homeland Security with 100,000 worker-strong immigration department, militarization of the border, and an end to any refugee program, as well as a mass deportation of over 15 million immigrants that are present in this country right now. That includes dreamers. These are people who were brought here as children by their parents, who know no other country but the United States, have grown up here over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They want to now take them and every other immigrant who may have come into this country illegally and deport all of them. If you watched the Republican National Convention, you saw a plethora, a sea of signs saying mass deportation now. Now, there are some out there who may be of the tendency or the mindset, well, what's so bad about that? Who do you think does the majority of the work and labor in this country that most United States citizens don't want to do? And think of the millions, literally millions of young Americans in this country who are professionals, doctors, lawyers, nurses, who will be deported from the country because they were brought here when they were 2 or 3 years old, of no will of their own, but by their parents, and now will face deportation. This is what they call for in the first 180 days, which is almost just profoundly unrealistic as well, because how do you deport 15 million immigrants in 180 days? Well, they purport to do so by militarizing the border and putting together a militarized force to round up immigrants from around the country, You can't ship out 15 million people all at one time. So that means they will be put into concentration camps, into stadiums, held there for an indiscriminate amount of time until they could be deported out of the country by bus, plane, train, or whatever other transportation they can come up with. Is that really the type of country you want to live in? This is akin to the same thing that Hitler imposed in Nazi Germany by putting Jews into concentration camps, shipping them on trains to Auschwitz, where they would eventually face what they called the final solution, which was death. They're not talking about killing them, at least not yet, immigrants. But they are talking about putting them in concentration camps so they could ship them out. Okay? Another part of this immigration policy, they want to do away with born citizenship. That says simply just because you are born in the United States, you are automatically a citizen. Now, I need for you to listen to this carefully, especially Black people, because most think that this just applies to immigrants of the Hispanic culture or nationality. But there are more Asian-born children in the United States of immigrants than there are Hispanic. And further, this is a sneaky way, listen to me, Black people, to take away citizenship from Black people. Because they will, since they will eradicate the teaching of true history, they will begin to classify African descendants as the descendants of African immigrants who came to this country. And we, as the offspring of those African, quote unquote, immigrants, would no longer be given legal status because we were born here, even though we were brought here and enslaved. Pay attention. They're also advocating for fundamentally altering American diplomacy to push an anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ plus agenda, adopt what they call a human rights regime distinct from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and abandon international organizations and traditional diplomatic and security alliances. I'm going to keep going because I've already been on for an hour. Give me just a little more time. Project 2025 and white nationalist policies. What I call Make Jesus White Again. Much of Project 2025 and Agenda 47 policies are based on what they call America's Judeo-Christian tradition stretching back to Genesis, which is absolute nonsense. So while you're trying to figure out, like I am as well, how American tradition can stretch back to biblical times, which were not American traditions, but Jewish traditions, check out a few of their Jesus-based policies based upon their interpretation and ideology about Jesus and the Bible. They will pass a law stating that only genders recognized by the United States government, the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. That is in quotations, ladies and gentlemen, because that is written in the Project 2025 policy. The only gender recognized by the United States government are male and female. So this wipes out LGBTQ plus community altogether, and that those genders are assigned at birth. So I have no idea what they're going to do with the hermaphrodite who is born with both sexual organs. Since they've claimed that a gender is assigned at birth, what are you going to assign the hermaphrodite? Next, the Department of Labor will recognize that, quote, God has ordained the Sabbath day as a day of rest. They want to incorporate part of the Ten Commandments as a policy for the Department of Labor, making it illegal for people to work on the Sabbath. Then we're going to have a whole debate on when is the Sabbath. Is it Saturday? Is it Sunday? Is it Friday? Because there are varying calendars that disagree as to what the Jewish Sabbath was. Next, Trump will delete the terms sexual orientation, gender, diversity, equity, inclusion, equality, equity, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of the First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency, regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. In other words, there would be no mention. It would be illegal to mention or use any of the terms such as sexual orientation, gender, diversity, equity, inclusion, equality, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, or any of these other terms in any agency, regulation, contract, grant, or piece of legislation that exists. So those little blurbs where it says that we do not discriminate based upon race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, so on, and so forth, now wiped out, and giving the liberty to every company, corporation, and the government to discriminate at their will. Let's keep going. They will make abortion impossible. And we'll get to that. If I have enough time left at the end, I'll go into more about what that means. It would make abortion impossible by passing a federal ban. The new vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, who is the partner with Donald Trump, has in several instances proposed a complete ban on abortion regardless of circumstance. That means people who have been the victims of molestation or rape are forced to have the child of their rapist and their victimizer. It means women who are at risk for dying or experiencing adverse medical issues are prohibited from having an abortion. It means that women who miscarry or who have a child that dies in utero are forced to carry that child to full term and cannot have that child disposed of. So even though the child or the fetus is dead in their womb, they have to continue to carry it for 9 months. And to do otherwise would put them in jeopardy, as well as the doctors and hospitals that facilitate it, under penalty of law, making it a felony for any doctor to perform the procedure. It would allow Christian schools to use federal education funds with no oversight or curriculum regulations, so they could teach whatever they wanted to teach in Christian school, that the earth is flat, that science isn't real, that man did not descend from apes, but that did not evolve from apes, or any other scientific terminology, that everything is abracadabra and hocus pocus poof and just came into being. So you've got one part of the population who believes science and another part of the population who doesn't, because their school doesn't require them to teach it or to teach them anything. They don't have to teach about civil rights. They don't have to teach about being humane. They can teach that that God intends for the races to remain separate, that it is against God and against the will of God, and it's wrong and should be illegal for races to mix or to communicate with each other, that they should live separately. Some could teach that it's okay for you to have a polygamous marriage. Others say, well, no, you can only have one. Others say that, it's against God for you to be able to love for same gender loving relationships. And then others teaching that, no, you can love whoever you choose. Absolute chaos in the school curriculum. It would protect churches' tax exemption status, which I firmly believe churches shouldn't be tax exempt anyway, but that's a whole nother conversation. But it would protect their tax exempt status of churches, even if they engage in discrimination or partisan political activity. So if a church says we don't allow blacks in here, we don't allow Hispanics in here, they would still retain their tax exempt status and will have not broken any law. It would exempt Christian colleges, employers, healthcare facilities from any anti-discrimination policy and government regulation. So if they are a Christian organization, they could discriminate all they want and say, if you don't believe in Jesus, you can't come to this school, you can't work in this hospital, you can't even get care in this hospital, you can't work for this company unless you accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior. No Hindus and Buddhists allowed, no Muslims allowed, no agnostics, no atheists, no one of any other religious persuasion is allowed in this company, in this school, in this hospital, in this facility. And Agenda 47 also insists that Trump will be, quote, a champion for the fundamental rights to pray in school, unquote. And when they say pray, because I hear some of you already saying, well, what's wrong with prayer in school? Well, what prayer? When they say pray, they mean it must be a Christian prayer. It can't be a Buddhist prayer, a Hindu prayer, a Taoist prayer. It cannot be an Islamic prayer. It must be a prayer that adheres to the Bible and Christianity. So any other person who practices any other religion is excluded from praying unless they agree to pray to the Christian God. Can be even a Jewish prayer, because Judaism and Christianity are not the same thing. All of these Jewish holidays that schools regularly celebrate or allow celebration for, that exemption is now gone. Only Christian holidays would be recognized, or at least the ones that are called Christian, because Christmas and Easter are clearly not Christian, but pagan. And they would reinstate the Muslim ban, because we don't want no Muslims coming into this country. But wait, there's more. Listen to me, Black people, because I told you we, along with the LGBTQ plus community, are the most targeted in this project. Here's Project 2025's anti-Black policies. When it comes to Black people, here is a quick list of programs that will be cut or reduced. Number one, food stamps, supplemental nutrition assistance programs, or SNAP, women and infant care, and the summer food service programs will be cut. The program will include also work requirements. You can't be poor and if you can't be homeless in this country. Everybody has to work. And if you're not, they will not offer you assistance or support. And for homeless people, you can be jailed simply for being homeless. They will also cut funding to NPR. They will defund the National Public Radio Public Broadcast System, that's PBS, and any grants for media outlets whose audiences are mostly liberal. They actually say this. Any audience of mostly liberal or quote unquote Black, they will defund the programs such as the National Public Radio Public Broadcast System. They're going after Big Bird, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, all of them. They will also attack school lunches. There's a whole section on rich kids eating free lunch. People who attend schools in poor districts will still have to qualify individually. Okay? There is a whole section on rich kids being able to eat free lunch, but people who attend schools in poor districts would still have to qualify individually, and the qualifications are more expansive and restrictive, so that it would be almost impossible for poor people to even qualify for free lunch or free breakfast. It is estimated that it will reduce the free lunch and free breakfast rolls by 78%. Student loans. Hello. A Trump administration would cut and or privatize all federal student loan programs. Not only would this end the fetish for forgiving student loans, is what they call it, a fetish for forgiving student loans, but it would also eliminate income-driven repayment plans. In other words, We don't care if you're struggling and you can't really afford to pay your student loan back all in a lump sum. We're going to eliminate that income-driven repayment plan and set it at a level where everyone has to pay back their student loan at the same level, regardless of their income. So the person who's working at Walmart has to pay just as much as the person who works at Wall Street. Black home ownership. While nearly 3 out of 4 white Americans own a home, there has never been a nanosecond in America's history, in the entire American history, when Black home ownerships reached 50%. Did you hear that, what I've just said? There has never been even a nanosecond in American history when Black home ownership reached 50%. Less than 50% of Black people in America own homes after over 250 years of slavery and years of servitude to this country. There has never been a time in the history of this country where more than half of them Black Americans owned their own home. A second Trump administration will continue this trend by dismantling programs designed to increase Black home ownership and ending, quote, other uses of special purpose credit authorities to further equity. In other words, putting it into these first home buyer programs that target minority groups. They will also end rental assistance programs as well. And then number 6, Black-owned businesses. Trump's Project 2025 and Agenda 47 would dismantle nearly every federal program dedicated to building and strengthening Black-owned businesses. It would eliminate a 60-year-old program that requires federal contractors to comply with anti-discrimination laws and overhaul the Minority Business Development Agency into a program that focused on, quote, the benefit of a free market, the evil of socialism and communism, and the destructive effect of taxes and regulations on minority businesses. Unquote. This is taken directly from Project 2025 and Agenda 47. This is what Trump and all of his cronies, his groupies, have in store and planned in their next administration. Now here, for those of you who are sitting and saying, well, President Biden and Harris, they're no better. They ain't doing nothing for Black folk. They ain't doing nothing for us. They haven't accomplished anything. You've allowed the media and the propaganda from the right wing and right-wing Christian white nationalists to warp your mind and convince you into thinking that the Biden-Harris administration hasn't done anything. And unfortunately, lately, even the Democratic Party is coming out against their own candidate. I can't even believe how stupid, idiotic this is. Attacking a president that has done so much for the country at large and for Black people in particular, And these same people in the Democratic Party that wants to oust Biden in the name of winning the election and defeating Trump, they say, are absolutely opposed to the Black woman who is the vice president elected to step in case the president is unable to serve. They want to move her to the side and have an open primary so that they can put in the one that they desire to be there, and totally ignore these accomplishments by the Biden-Harris administration, one of the most accomplished administrations in American history that rivals FDR. Here they are, just a few of them. The Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the creation of over 11 million jobs, and the fact that more than 17 states have an unemployment rate that is below 3%. That's historical. The rescue, Biden-Harris rescued the economy and effectively handled the pandemic after the COVID pandemic that took place, and the economy was tanked by the Trump administration. They imposed and passed legislation for an infrastructure bill, something that Trump and every other president prior to him has been promising to do for the past 40 years and couldn't get it done. They passed an infrastructure bill to rebuild our bridges and highways and sewage systems. Remember Flint? Are you thinking? They were the first ones to pass, I put NES, that's a typo, new gun legislation in over 30 years. Now, it didn't go far enough. It didn't go as far as I think it should go to eliminate assault weapons and ban high-capacity magazines and so on, and require background checks. But it was a step in the right direction. And they were the first administration to do so in over 30 years. Despite the protestations of the NRA and the white ring gun nuts. But that's not all. He promised and appointed the first Black woman to the Supreme Court of the United States in Justice Ketanji Brown. He appointed over 200 federal judges of diverse backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities to these federal judge appointments. These are lifetime appointments. Have we forgotten that he has canceled student loan debts for millions of people, and specifically a large number of African Americans in this country who could only go to college by taking out student loans? The most aggressive legislation on climate change that has ever been passed in the history of the United States. Lowered the cost of prescription drugs, capping the price of insulin at $35 a month. We know that Black people incur and suffer higher rates of diabetes than any other race in this country. And the cost for insulin has been astronomical. The Biden-Harris administration capped that cost at $35 a month and brought down the price of prescription drugs across the board by giving Medicare and Medicaid the right to be able to negotiate price with the pharmaceutical companies because they could buy prescription drugs from not just American pharmaceutical companies, but other companies across the borders. This drove down the price of prescription drugs. They've also provided over $16 billion in funding for HBCUs. This is the largest funding in history. Even though Trump and his cronies lie continuously and say Trump funded HBCUs more than any other president, it is an empirical lie. Numbers don't lie, and it is recorded in our records. It is a fact that the Biden-Harris administration has provided the largest funding to historically Black colleges and universities in American history. And they have achieved both the lowest Black unemployment rate on record and the lowest gap between Black and white unemployment that has ever been recorded in the nation's history. This is just a handful of the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. Now, unfortunately, because of the idiotic, stupid, asinine machinations of many white Democratic leaders in the Democrat Party, there's a good possibility that Joe Biden may be pushed out and that they may completely overlook Vice President Kamala Harris, which to me would just doom the Democrat Party to losing this election, losing the House and the Senate. But they seem too stupid to even see that. But ladies and gentlemen, even if that were to happen, it would be more advantageous for all of us, but specifically Black and brown people, to vote for a jackass before putting Donald Trump and his administration in power. I'm going to say it again for the people sitting in the back. It would be more advantageous for everyone, but especially Black and brown people in this country, to vote for a jackass than to put Donald Trump and his cronies and groupies into a position of power that they have absolutely no intention of ever giving up. To vote or allow Trump to be elected is to end elections in this country. He will serve until the day he dies and set up a succession that will put either one of his sons or one of his other cronies into power immediately following his death. That's not hyperbole. That's not me just throwing out conspiracy theories. This is documented in their own agenda that is their intent. They have already put in place systems should Donald Trump actually lose the election to say that he didn't lose it, that the election again was rigged, and to stage a more effective coup than the one that was done on January 6th to forcibly take over the government. If you don't believe that that's possible, pay attention to January 6th, but pay attention to what's happened in other countries as well, who were once under democratic rule and now are under the authoritarianism of a dictator. I hope that you are paying attention to what I have said. Okay, going back to these comments, Don Driscoll again, making some very good comments here. The Freedom Cactus Caucus of the Heritage Foundation, etc., most religious organizations connected to any right-wing organization, every pastor, priest, rabbi should be educating their members every time they meet people. This is huge. It is huge. He goes on to say, this is the potential. He didn't say potential. I'm saying potential. End of democracy, period. If we don't keep getting this word out. I hear you, Dan. That's one of the reasons I devoted this entire empowerment sessions to this topic. Okay? We are facing the existential threat of our lifetime, of this generation. Donald Trump and his groupies and cronies are racist, misogynist, evil, wicked, but they are not by any means stupid. They are very well educated, mostly white men who have laid out a plan and agenda to radically change this country for the worst, to destroy democracy, and to specifically target Black, brown, and LGBTQ plus people in this country. You're right, Pastor Knighton. I hope that you're talking about it as well and encouraging all of your colleagues in the Christian community to talk about it, not just once in a while, but continuously from now to November. He says, teach Isaac Miles, we are not paying enough attention to what is happening. Absolutely. We're not paying enough attention. And unfortunately, the media is elevating voices like Candace Owens, like Ice Cube, Tim Scott, and other Black faces who are not for Black people. Just because they have a Black face doesn't mean they care about Black people. Y'all better hear what I'm saying to you. Why do you think they keep pushing Tim Scott out there with his ignorant behind? He's so stupid to keep allowing him and the other boy, what's his name? Donald Douglas or something like that. The other guy from Florida. Just allow themselves to be used as a puppet and a pawn to parrot and be the mouthpiece of their hateful agenda that is working against their own interests. People like Clarence Thomas, who should have been impeached and thrown out a long time ago, along with Alito. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying to you? Okay? Fiona, Flora Samuel says, I agree wholeheartedly with this entire sharing. Thanks. It really should be a mountaintop sharing from every pulpit here in America, especially our Black communities. My message to people is that we have to quit being so religious and start becoming active in what is happening in the world that is already and will furtherly affect us in depth like never before. Now that the GOP and all of 2025 project now have a Republican Jesus, Donald Trump, and his name is Donald Trump, the religious church going. That's all that came up. But yeah, it's true. They have elevated this man to Jesus status, and his groupies worship him. You saw them all wearing them little fake band-aids on their ear for a nick that he got on his ear. And the narrative that's being pushed that he was, almost assassinated. I can't say on this public platform what I think really took place, but I can say to you that that whole event was as fictional as a Tyler Perry movie. I was about to say a bad Tyler Perry movie, but all his movies are bad just about. God. I love you, Tyler, but you need to hire some writers, bro. These movies you putting out are just absolute trash. Okay? Are you hearing me? Good, Pastor. Lawrence Knighton says, I am sharing regularly and telling pastors to do the same. Absolutely, man, we got to. I've been texting, emailing, and inboxing as many pastors that I know, even though most of them don't like to deal with me anymore, and they, don't want to publicly have nothing to do with me. I'll go to them in private and say, look, bro, if you're not talking about this, you ain't talking about nothing. You need to open your mouth and talk about this. Instead of slap your neighbor and turn around and high five your neighbor and take 3 steps forward, and God's getting ready to bless you with this, that, and the other, and the enemy is fighting against you, this, how, Give your people some real solid information that can empower them and begin to encourage them to get actively involved in the protection of this democracy and of the Black community in particularly. All this other nonsense that you up there hollering and hooping and spitting and rolling and jumping and speaking in tongues about is not doing anybody any good. It's not about as worth about as much as a hill of beans. Here are the things that we really need to be focused on. Here are the things that we really need to be concerned with. You're right, Lawrence. He says all our skin folk are not kinfolk. Did you hear that? That is the absolute truth. And Clarence Thomas is living proof. Okay? Flora says, I've said this for glee years, I'm sure you meant many years now, that if Trump got back into office, he would definitely target the Black community in every area possible. It's time for our community to especially get educated. You are absolutely right. You are right. My brother Daniel's on here. He says the hard part is that the conservative stance of the Black church sort of buy into the logic of 2025. Many of them do, Daniel. It's true. It is so true that many Black churches and leaders kind of buy into that whole ideology of the white. Well, that's because Christianity is, for the most part, a white-centric religion. Lord, I know I just lost some people right then, but it's the truth. It is the absolute truth. They teach you to hate your own history, your heritage, your lineage, and to embrace white ethnocentric beliefs and ideologies as your absolute truth. Look up to a white Jesus with blonde hair and blue eyes and white skin and worship and believe and align yourself with white doctrines and white truths written by white men, preserved by a white church with a white agenda that didn't even consider us humans. Look up the early church fathers. First of all, ask yourself why there are no early church mothers and only early church fathers. Secondly, why all the early church fathers are white, old white men, from Polycarp to Origen to Ignatius. You don't see no Black early church fathers. All the early church fathers on which Christian theology is built are old white, racist, prejudiced men. Don't get me started down that road. I really upset the apple cart this morning. And those are facts. I'm not making that up. Do a Google search. Do the research for yourself. Do the research for yourself. Daniel says, not only do we need to be educated on this point, but we need to get real about the desire to wipe us black beings from man, don't get me started. Don't get me started. Yes, sir. There is a real desire, not only in America, but by other countries as well, to completely exterminate black beings from this planet. Now, they're not going to succeed, but it's the desire. And you're right, Daniel, they still don't consider us human. They still consider us less than human. Many of them, many of your Christian preachers that you put up on a pedestal and made heroes out of, hated black people or hate black people. Like your Jimmy Swaggart and your Jim Bakers. Oh, y'all don't want to hear this now. And your Marilyn Hickeys. And your Kenneth Copelands. Oh, no, he embraced Creflo Dollar. You see where he kept in that, right? And fortunately, Brother Creflo is starting to wake up now. He hasn't gotten all the way there, but he's starting to wake up and realize that he's been used for years as a pawn. I told y'all don't get me started. Okay? Anti-blackness, that's right, Daniel. Daniel says anti-blackness is global. You better believe it. Okay? Go ahead, my brother. Flip the darn card over. I could go down that road and do some serious flipping. Do a Jesus on them. He flipped the tables over, so you just upset the apple cart of religion today that our people are so entrenched in. It is absolutely true. I do enough of that on a regular basis. That's why a lot of preachers don't deal with me right now. They don't deal with me right now because I completely eviscerate their Eurocentric ideology of God and relationship with God. They try and cling to their white Jesus for as long as they possibly can and hold on to their Eurocentric ideologies. Got you hating your ancestors, but worshiping white men like Paul and Timothy and Moses and all these others. Now, it's okay for you to venerate them, but don't you start talking about your own ancestors now. That's evil, wicked, that's demonic. Now, Moses and Paul and Elijah, well, they're okay now because they're white folk. But don't you be around here talking about, venerating your ancestors, respecting and honoring them and consulting with them. No. We can pray to Mary, but please don't talk to your ancestors now. How you sound? Think about what you are saying. Buddha didn't die for me. Jesus died for me, which is a misnomer in itself because Jesus didn't die for you. If you read your Bible and actually do the historical research, he died for the Jewish people to convince them that he was the Christ. He didn't really need to die for them, but he had to because they were so locked and loaded and entrenched in the one particular ideology that there had to be some kind of human blood sacrifice that he went ahead and said, okay, then I'm not going to even try and destroy your law. I'm just going to fulfill it. But he wasn't talking to the rest of us. He was talking to them because the rest of us wasn't living by their law. He said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. And so what law was he talking about? He was talking about the law of Moses, the Pharisaic laws. He was talking about the Levitical laws. And those laws apply to who? Those Jewish people. It didn't apply to everybody else. He said, but I came to fulfill it. I came to do what you think is required by your law. He wasn't talking about us. Oh, Jesus didn't die. Buddha didn't die for me. Jesus died for me. Okay, even if you want to adapt the idea and you think that Jesus died for you, well, guess what? So did Martin Luther King. So did Malcolm X. So did Medgar Evers. So y'all ain't going to talk back to me. There's a whole lot of black people, a whole history of black people whose names we don't even know that were brought over in the Middle Passage that died for you. No, Jesus the only one who died for me. You must be out of your ever-loving mind. Have you lost your rabbit? Boy, I almost, y'all gonna make me cuss on here this morning. Have you lost your mind? How disrespectful is it to your ancestors, to our ancestors, say that they didn't die for us? Who do you think took those whippings, beatings, and torture? Who do you think went through all of that slavery and masochism and sadism imposed upon them by white men in this country? Who do you think went through it and endured it and fought to create a better world and society for you to live in? Who do you think? How dare you say they didn't die for you? Man, let me stop. I done went 2 hours and I know I'm pissing some folk off now, but I'm just telling you the truth. You need to wake the hell up and stop believing all of this white Eurocentric ideology about God and relationship to God. Because contrary to popular belief, God is not a Christian. God is not a Jew, not a Hindu, nor a Buddhist. God is a spirit, an energy, a force, a power. God is not a man. God is not a woman. God is not an American. And God is not white. God is not some old white man sitting on a throne with a long white beard and a scepter in his hand and a crown on his head, sitting high and looking low. But God is a divine, omnipresent spirit that is in you, through you, and as you. Quit letting these church folk disempower you and put you in a position of victimization. Because you ascribe to some white Eurocentric ideology of God. It's time to wake the hell up and embrace the real God that lives in you, that you are the divine experience and expression of. You are the vessel through which the divine experiences and expresses itself in the earth. You in your black bodies with your black face and your black features and your black tendencies and your black culture are God in the flesh. How you like them apples? Oranges, pears, bananas, or whatever fruit you like. Mangoes, pineapples. Okay? It's just a fact. Oh, goodness. I done got Daniel started now. I got to get off Daniel, but here we go. I got to put him up. He says, can we talk about the fact that the Sun Book is plagiarized from African mythology? Oh, okay. Many parts of it, many parts of the Bible, plagiarized. It taken in whole stories, stolen in whole cloth. And all they did was change the names and the characters from ancient Egyptian mythology. That's a historical, Googleable fact, researchable fact. And people get mad about facts because they don't want to have facts. They'd rather just believe. He goes on to say, can we talk about what took place at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD? I think it's time to flip over these things en masse. You're absolutely right. Okay. Oh, man, he done got started. Can we talk about the Virgin Mary being stolen from the Black Madonna, which is the mythological Isis? It's true. It's true. So please understand, Black people, we are under threat. The entire country is under threat right now, but we are specifically targeted by Trump and his coming administration. If we don't line up and act, get up off your lazy backside and get registered to vote and go. And they're not going to make it easy. They never have. They're going to do everything they can to discourage you from voting. And they got black faces to come out and try and talk you out of voting or to get you to vote for this racist who can't even stand you or them. But you have got to persevere, register, start paying attention to what's going on all around you and stop watching all of these reality shows and start watching reality and vote. Vote like your life and freedom depends on it, because it absolutely does. And if you got to stand in line then. Bring your own water. Bring your own lunch. Since they won't let anybody bring you anything or give you anything, bring your own then. Pack like we used to do when black people had to travel in the South, through the South. When I was a kid, our parents packed up food and put it in the car because we knew we couldn't stop at most places to be able to get food. We weren't even allowed inside. And so it became a habit and a tradition for black folk just to pack up food and take it with us everywhere. So pack up your food and your drinks and take it to the voting booth. Stand in line for as long as you need. Turn it into a picnic and a party. Put up tents while you're sitting out there in line. Turn on some music and do a line dance while you're waiting to go and vote. But for God's sake, exercise your right before it's taken away from you to vote, and keep this monster out of office. And not him only, but vote all the way down the ballot, because we need Democrats to be in control of the presidency and of the Senate and the House. The only reason that the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act were not restored and were able to be gutted by this raggedy Supreme Court, racist Supreme Court, is because we didn't have a clear majority in both houses. And so two white folk posing as Democrats, Joe Manchin and his little girlfriend, I forgot her name now, silly heifer, oh, Lord, stood in the way. And the Republicans have written in stone that everything has to pass by a 60-vote majority, and we didn't have a 60-vote majority. Now, I guarantee you, if Trump gets back into office, that'll be thrown out the window. They won't have all these 60-vote majority requirements anymore. That'll be gone and done with. And this whole idea of having a filibuster, that'll be wiped out. Now, they defend it all right now because Biden's in office. But I guarantee you, as soon as Trump is in office, they will do away with all of it. You don't believe me? Look at Mitch McConnell and what he's done over these last few years. That old bastard white hypocrite did exactly what he chose to do in order to maintain power for the white majority. Yeah, I said it. Don't get me started. I told y'all. Okay? I got to stop. I've been on here way too long, over 2 hours. I hope that you learned and listened. I hope that you took it in. Save this broadcast. Share it with your friends who were too lazy to get up and watch it this morning. Make them sit down and watch it. Show it to your children. Listen to it again and again until you get all of this information digested into your system. Talk about it with your friends, families, loved ones. Get the word out and get motivated. Don't let the stupid stuff that you see on television, especially coming from the Democrats right now with their attack against Biden and Harris, and it's really not about Biden. It's more aimed and targeted at Harris. Wonder why. Don't let that discourage you or dissuade you. Don't let that break you down. We have got to organize, unify, and beat back the forces of evil. As usual, it's left up to the black community primarily to rescue this country. And we got to rise to the occasion. Don't you let anybody tell you this is not your country. It is more our country than it is anybody else's. We built this joint for free. So take ownership of our country. It's our land, our country, our America. And let's make America great for the first time. All right. I'm done, man. I'm done. Listen, I need your support. They want to silence voices like me. You know they do. So I need those of you who are on here to support me with your words, with sharing, with commenting, and helping me to expand and broaden the reach of this particular platform. You can also support this work, this platform, through your giving. And I'm asking every one of you that's tuned in and watching me right now to send some type of monetary gift, some offering, some seed that you want to sow into this platform. You can use the means that you see on your screen right now. Send your gift to Emerge on PayPal, Zelle, CashApp, or Venmo. And we appreciate your generosity and your support. Take a moment, take out your phone or whatever device you're using, open up your banking app and send your seed right now. No, I'm not finna promise you no pie in the sky and you're going to get a new house, get a new car, and money just going to come raining down from heaven and a money tree going to grow in your backyard. There is a power in seed sowing and giving, but it's not abracadabra and hocus pocus. It's spiritual principles and practices. But I'm asking you to give in support of the work that we are trying to do to empower people everywhere with truth, with facts, with understanding. Thank you so much for tuning in and for your support today. You guys have an absolutely stupendous day.
Some of you are even afraid to dream, afraid to imagine. But I'm here to tell you that you are an infinite, limitless, boundless being. Are you willing to do what is necessary to have what you desire?
You've been listening to Apostle Isaac Miles, the disruptive innovator, a mentor, an author, a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, and the founder and spiritual director at emergelec Life Enrichment Center. Please take a minute to subscribe, like, and share this page. If you'd like to become a partner, you can do so by emailing us at emerge.lifecenter@gmail.com. Again, that's emerge.lifecenter@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for watching.